No, I think they put me right after Father Larry for a reason. He will look so good. If you wanted, you will never want to kill him. That's for sure. Don't worry about that. So what a great opportunity. I have to tell you, I did not confer with the bishop or with Father Larry on my talk. But it's amazing to me how they coincide. This is the Holy Spirit that works within everything that we do, because He's always present. I want to tell you the story of two wills, my will and God's will. I was married in May, coming this May 26, I'll be married 44 years. It's not always been blessed years. As a matter of fact, I would tell you the first 23 years of that marriage is troubled, because those 23 years was me continuing to feed me in my will. And it's amazing as men how we kind of do that. We do things sometimes just because, like Father Larry's saying, you know, if you're doing that because you're going to go to heaven, or if you're doing that because you get something out of it, it becomes a transaction. It's, no, I do this, you do that for me. And that's what the first 23 years of my marriage was. Me serving because of what I could get out of it. One of the first things I did for my wife was to convert to Catholicism. I was brought up Baptist. When I was 16, I was given the option to go to church or not. I chose not to. But I was interested in this gal in high school. She's Catholic. And I told her, okay, I'll become Catholic, so I'll help you raise our children up in the Catholic Church. And that's why I became Catholic. So the first 10 years of the marriage, I didn't go to Mass, occasionally when it rained, because I couldn't go play golf. And that's what I did. Within that first 10 years, after about 4 years of marriage, we had my son, Ryan. So when he was 6 years old, one day he was getting ready for church and I was getting ready for golf, and he turned to Mom and said, why do I have to go to church and Dad doesn't? You ever heard that? Christine, my wife, she is, for those of you who know her, she is one of the sweetest, most gracious and lovely persons you will ever meet. But there is a gaze that she has. Very few of you have ever seen this gaze. But I will tell you, when you see this gaze, you stop, you listen, and you do. So when she turned to me and asked me, why do your son go to church and you don't, with that gaze, I gave up golf. And I started going to church. And I was one of the guys who sat in that pew. Don't raise your hand if you're one of them. And I'm wondering, how can this last a whole hour? You know, how can they make this last a whole hour? Homilies 10 minutes. When it was a Baptist church, that's all it was. It was over, you left. So that's how I kind of looked at church for years. And in that time, in pursuing a career, going to college and everything else, I continued to live this my will, my way, do things. I would do things with the family, but it was typically things that if we went out to do it, it's because I wanted to do it and I had to incorporate the family so I wouldn't get the gaze, is how I made Christine happy. At least I was doing something for the family, but it was something I wanted to do. If I didn't want to do it, I would be the most miserable person to be around during the activity. I can't tell how many times I was at the zoo wondering, yeah, it's a monkey, thank you. That was me. So as you can imagine, over 23 years, I put a lot at risk. I put my marriage and my family at risk. So much so that at one time my wife, Christine, tells me that the only reason that she has not left me is because she was Catholic and she continued and continues and continues to pray for me. All right, guys, you hear this from your wife, what do you do? And quite honestly, this was not given to me with the gaze. This was given to me with tears. That she just kept praying for me. Years later, I learned about St. Monica, and goodness, it works, fellas. So, as we looked at some of the things that we would do, and when after she told me this, I started to kind of change a little bit, not very much. But I'll tell you, the next 12 years, while I changed this much in that 12-year period, it was not a whole lot, and we were not a very happy couple, but we were together. In 2002, I came home one day and I was told I was going on an Acts retreat. I came up with every excuse in the book. I literally had an accident the day before the retreat and told Christine, I can't go. We've got our car, we got to get it fixed. She told me, the car will run fine, you're going. So I did go. It was on that Acts retreat where you have these incredibly good men sharing a part of their lives with you, that one of those stories was my story. The infidelities to my wife, to my family, in my activities, in my actions, all came to light. It was a conviction beyond conviction on that retreat. On that retreat, I went to confession. And the priest who I went to confession with he heard a lot. It wasn't too many guys, I'm sure, looked at me when I came up. I took so long. But I will tell you that priest is one of my best friends now today. After that confession, I remember walking away. I don't remember touching the ground, all right? It was great. Confession is powerful. It's releasing, and it's rejuvenating in your soul. So coming back from the retreat, the night we came back, I just spent that night in my wife's arms, apologizing to her for how I've hurt her and how I've hurt my family. And I promised her that this will that I have been living will change. And from that point, I have begun to change and reform that will to the will of God. That has been my goal. I'm a slow donkey. It's not been moving nearly as fast as I would like. And one of the things I have learned is that the closer I get to God, the more I feel far away. But I want to do so much to close the gap between us that I will never stop. So, part of that change was for me to become more involved in the parish and being more involved in the activities around me. Things that would be of service. As my wife will tell you, Kristen will tell you, that my problem is I get involved in things and I get too involved. I get bogged down in it. And I started to do exactly that. I became involved in community activities. I became involved in parish activities. I volunteered for boards, participated in many things and that served others. And it made me feel good. But again, there was a question as to why was I doing this, for me, or was it for the good of others? It's one of those reformation, the changing of my will that needed to take place. It was happening, but very slowly. To the point at one time that Christine then stopped and asked me, you know, there's a ministry that you're just not serving really well. You're doing all these things in the community, but when are you going to come home and serve this family? Okay, you guys, I'm on a road here. I'm trying to change a will to God's will, and I missed the boat because the first area I should have changed was that area that our first ministry, our marriage, our family. I still hadn't gotten a hold of that idea of where it should be going. I mean, after this, I had been involved in 15 ACTS retreats, 2 a year, for years. And this is one of the reasons why Christine would come to me and ask, when are you going to serve your marriage? I immediately responded by backing off of everything. So much so that when I am asked to participate, that I will turn to Christine and says, this is what I've been asked to do. While I would like to do it, if this compromises anything about us, I will not. She has the right of first refusal in everything in my life. All of this began to prepare me for about 8 years ago, because 8 years ago I became very ill. In that illness, I lost 100 pounds in a matter of 3 to 4 months. I was slowly dying. I became, there's so much pain and despair. I had no answers, didn't know why. One day, Christine, at that time, who was taking care of not only me, but also her mother, who'd been living with us for the past 12 years, taking care of her because of dementia, living at home. And now she comes home from work and she has a husband who has turned to her and said, honey, I want to make funeral plans. I'm not going to survive this. And I need to prepare for you to be able to take care of yourself. I got that gaze. I got the gaze that said, no, you're not. And she took this power that she has, I don't know where she gets it, and she started looking around for help, and she finally found some help in Houston with some physicians who did diagnose me, who did begin an intervention of treatment that for a year, I started to stabilize, and through her prayers, her absolute commitment to my life, and through their interventions, she saved my life, because she's the one that found them, and she made sure that I followed what I was told to do. It's an amazing thing that when you're near that type of feeling, one of the things that happened is I entered into some very dark times, dark periods, where I literally was looking for relief for just 10 minutes from pain and from despair. I would sit in a chair, look at a spot on the wall, and then the whole world would just kind of close down on that spot. As I got through all of my illnesses, I still remember, I can still sit here right now and tell you exactly where I was when I had each of those episodes of darkness, because that was what the no hope looks like. You literally have no idea what the next moment looks like, let alone what your future might look like. It is a darkness that you never want to visit or have upon you. When I finally, after 2 surgeries, was able to become a little bit healthier, I had the opportunity in 2016 to sit down with Father Dan Morales, our pastor here at Holy Family at the time. 2016 was the year that he passed away. In the beginning of that year, I sat down with him. I asked him at the rectory, Father Dan, had in your illness, and he had episodes just as I was describing. And I asked him, how did you get through it? I mean, I got through it because I had a wife who just would not give up on me. But how would you get through? How do you get through it? Not only did he have those, but he said that he had the same feelings of this darkness, of hopelessness. And he told me how he would dive into prayer. But more importantly, he told me that at the very moment that he'd have those moments, somebody would enter into his life, a parishioner or family or friend. They would make a phone call, he'd get a card, he'd get an email, and it lifted him up. And it wasn't until he told me that I realized, in all those moments, I had those dark, very dark times. Every one of those moments, what brought me out of it were people There are people in this room right now who made a phone call, who let me know they were praying for me, gave me emails, sent me a card, a letter, just to let me know I wasn't alone. And I did not realize that was God taking care of me. He never abandoned me. But when you're in it, you don't see him. And you don't know what that looks like. To be that abandoned, feel that abandoned, when all along, those were the footsteps in the sand that I never recognized weren't mine. This is a very important time because in that period of illness, in that darkness, and to come back out of this and to see myself looking at these things, I then turned and I told Christine that I have to accelerate the idea of God working in my life and guiding my will. One of the things that we started doing was started to talk to each other about where we were in our faith. I was on a track where I was involved in men's acts, I was involved in men's activities. Christine was involved with Catholic Daughters and in women's activities and taking care of her mom. And we realized that we were not going at this together. We were building our individual faiths, but we were not building our faith as a married couple. We went to Father Gary at that time, who was pastor at OLV, and asked him to help us with this. And one of the first things he asked us was, "What's your prayer life like?" There's a long moment of silence. And so he told us, "Here's your assignment. I want you to go home and I want you to start praying together. Not at meal, not an Our Father. I want you to actually have a conversation with God together as this married couple and saying, how am I preparing to live with you and to love you?" So one of the first things we did when we got home was we went back and looked at our vows. And some of you, if you remember your vows, I'm going to repeat them to you, and I want you to think, have I been living the vows? I, for me, Terry, take you, Christine, to be my wife. I promise to be true to you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. When we recited these vows back to each other, and we entered into prayer, holding hands, asking God to make those vows living in us from that moment on, it opened a door that I can tell you has been one of the greatest openings of all time. The ability to talk to each other, plan together, dream together, and be able to say, this is what we want for us, and this is what we want to bring to others. Because we all experience these. We all experience the darkness. We all experience the brokenness. We all experience the lack of being able to live our vows. But here's the thing to remember for all that we do. The first 23 years of our marriage was not blissful. The last 21 years have been the most incredible years I could ever describe. It's 21 years that if I'd had 44, wow, how great that would be. But I, right now, can tell you, I hope I'm married to this woman for the next 45 years. Because in 45 years, I might get it right. But man, we are going to have so much fun. and being able to be together, to dream, to be with our grandkids, and to serve others who are so in desperate need of rebuilding their marriage, seeing their marriage for the incredible goodness that it is, and to know that this sacrament is something that we can change the world with. That is our goal. We dream and pray that all the trials that we've now encountered in our lives, in our marriage together, will prepare us to be saints in heaven together. Because I so desire to have the Lord's hand on our shoulders with us together in heaven. I need to help her be there. And she has always been helping me to be a saint. And yes, I think I'm still capable of doing that. I love what Father Larry was saying. If what you're doing when you go home to love your marriage, love your wife and your children for their good, you will be in heaven. You will be in heaven. That is my prayer for you. And I would just want you to know, I would ask for you to pray for us, that we will achieve that. And in heaven we will have a celebration that through reformed wills to the will of God. Thank you.